What's everybody doing out there? Thanks for coming by BassLife today. Hope you're all having a great Canada Day. July 1st, all my sisters and brothers in Canada celebrating. It was a great day today. I hope you all smashed them out on the lake. I know a lot of guys I talked to, fishing was on today. It was super on. So that was awesome to hear that. Our guest tonight is he's actually running a little bit late. It's David Swenseid, and he is from Duo Realis, and we're going to be talking about spy baits today. Everything to do with spy baits. I'm excited because I'm not really a spy bait guy, so I'm excited to learn what the deal is with this bait. So that's going to be awesome when he shows up. But first, let me introduce my guest for this evening. It is none other than Mr. Danny Dunn. Danny, how you doing, buddy?
I'm great, man.
What are you doing?
Got me some, will you? I'm eating pizza, man.
Pizza? You made your own pizza?
I do. I got a pizza oven in my house, in the backyard.
You have a pizza oven in your backyard?
A
Wow.
wood-burning pizza oven, bud.
How come you've never invited me for pizza?
You got me there, bud.
What is the deal there? Oh, now you're upside down. There you go. No, I got you. So you got a fire? Is it a fire oven, a stone, a fire thing?
Yeah, wood burning.
Really?
Hardwood burning, bud. Yep.
Wow.
Stone on the inside. It's beautiful.
So you were out fishing today, weren't you? I said you were out fishing today. I could tell by the redness on your face you were out fishing today.
And just absolutely smashed him.
Really?
Yep.
They were on?
Well, for some guys.
Anything in particular? Islands, or like what were they hitting?
Well, actually, I caught fish on a tube, a drop shot, and a spy bait. And actually, what's really interesting is I think I caught like maybe 3 bedfish. All the rest of them were roamers. So I really don't think they're set up yet. I think some fish have spawned, some haven't. But the thing is, we got another full moon coming.
Okay.
And I think the fish that were roaming, I think they're going to pull up.
Yeah, the guys I talked to that were on Quinny today, they were smashing them too. And I guess it's all largemouth stuff there in the bay there. So they must have been dunking with jigs and stuff. But yeah, they said it was on fire. I know one guy caught 21 pounds of largemouth there in Quinny.
That's nice, man. Definitely doable there, right? Great spot.
Yeah. Yeah. So this spy bait stuff, like, I'm going to be honest with you. I heard I'm usually the last to figure stuff out anyway. But I heard about this last year during the season.
Mm-hmm.
Ran out, grabbed myself a couple. I think they were the 80s. Now, I don't know if it's an alpha. Yeah, just a little guy, whatever they are. Anyway, I grabbed a couple of them.
The skinny ones, right?
Yeah, the little skinny ones. And threw them around a bit.
I grabbed some from my wall in the house. Are you there?
Yep, I got you.
Yeah. So, basically, let me get set up here. Can you hear me okay?
I got you.
Okay, good. So, these are the ones here that I've been throwing for a while. Now they've got these ones are the reinforced connection. There was a little bit of an issue there, but it really wasn't much of an issue. Lost a couple of fish, but all I did was I'll show you what I did to fix the ones that I had, because you definitely don't matter. All I did was there was a couple of issues where this back thing was pulling out. So all I did was I put some super glue in there, screwed it back in, life was good. But this is the 80, 90 size. Don't pay attention to color because that's custom. That's none of your beeswax.
Okay.
But that's the thinner one, right? That's the 80. I guess the 80 millimeter. And you know that one's okay. That one's okay. We'll go through what the bait does and everything. But I'll tell you, I was really happy when I saw the Alpha 72 or the 72 Alpha. And they say it on the package that it's a bait caster model, but you know, we can cover tackle and all that stuff too, because I have a couple of spy baits. I've been doing it for a little while. But this is here the 72. I like it because it gives more flash to it, you can see. Now, that's another nice color. You don't see that, but anyways.
No, I see the color.
Hmm. But you look at the difference in the profile between the two, right? Let me just put them like this. Can you see it? Let me pull it
Yeah, I
back.
got you. Yeah, there, pull back. There you go.
There we go.
Yeah.
So one's a little thinner, one's a little thicker, and I'll tell you, I caught a lot of fish on the 80. I didn't throw the 90 too much. I know some guys do, but I didn't. For any of the smallmouth stuff that I was doing, I was using an 80. But I'll tell you, absolutely a stellar bait. And you know where I use it?
No.
I'm telling you, balsam, rice. I never caught anything half decently big in Tri Lakes, but rice, balsam for sure, Simcoe for sure, Lake Ontario, Lake Erie. It's really that subtle type of, like today. I hit the water this morning at 7 a.m. and went to my first spot, first cast, caught a 4.5. So I was pretty happy, right? And I caught that on a tube. And the reason I caught it on a tube, I started with a jerk bait because I figured I'm going to get the mood of the fish to see what they're doing. So I started throwing a jerk bait. A couple of fish came right up in behind this jerk bait. Now, this time of the year, water temperature 72 degrees. I'm like, man, they shouldn't be in bunches. But they were in bunches. I was really surprised. Right now you'd be looking for singles or fish that are, kind of, lone ones looking to spawn or just post spawn. But these fish were in bunches. So I was in probably 10, 11 feet or 12 feet of water, threw on a jerkbait. They started to follow. Threw out the freaking tube, whack, caught a fish. And then as I went down this one little break, it's about a 8 to 12 foot break. I was throwing a jerkbait. I was getting a lot of follows. I said, well, you know what? I'm really not going to do this whole 1-2 punch stuff. So I picked up spy bait. And my spy bait setup may be a little different than other guys, but what I throw is 7'4", 7'6". They got two rods.
Mm.
And the reason why I have two rods is I have two different types of spy baits, right? I'll throw this one here. I like this one. Then I should throw a pearl white. Um, I'm not going to get down there and tie them on or retie them the other one. So I'll have a pearl white and then I'll have this one on. So just a bit of contrast. White, not a lot of flash. This one a little flash, and they're going to tell me what they want, right? So,
Yeah.
anyways, I start bombing spy bait down there, hookup, solid hookup, and I just lean back and throw that thing as far as I can. So what I'm throwing it on is at 7'4" and a 7'6", and
What
I'm
about
throwing
line?
that on. I'm just going to tell you, I throw that on 15-pound braid, and then I put a 10-pound fluoro, and I put probably an 8 to 10 foot lead on that. So actually, give me 1 second. Hey, Ben. So I put like an 8 to 10 foot lead of that of 10-pound fluorocarbon. Again, that comes back to like I was saying with my jerkbait fishing. If I get a fish at the side of the boat, um, and it takes a dive, I want to make sure that I've got some fluorocarbon. Can you fire that other pie in there for me? Keep an eye on her.
More
And one thing,
pizza.
we got lots of pies flying around here, man.
Well, good,
But
because
anyways,
George says he wants a pizza.
Georgie boy. The hooks that come on these things, I'm going to talk about in a little bit. But anyways, so I'm throwing that 15-pound braid. Uh, I'm doing a uni to uni knot, 8 to 10 feet. I don't know, pull out 10 to 12 strands.
See, and I'm surprised at that too, because I heard a lot of people are running using 6 feet, or sorry, 6 pound test, and I'm like, they're using 6 pound test and like really finessing them out.
I know some people who throw 12 and 15-pound braid, but that has to do with depth and everything else. They're not shot. Some people do, some people don't. I mean, I'm a jig guy and a jerkbait guy. I like to think that I'm a power fisherman, and I mean today I just pasted them. I mean, I heard guys had a bit of a time on Simcoe because they're running all the regular spots, but nah, I don't go any lighter than 10. And the reason why is I just think the bait reacts a little bit better to that.
Yeah.
But the whole makeup of the bait I like. I found though, I know guys, lot of my friends Martin and Sebastian, they caught a lot of fish on that 80. You know,
Yeah.
and so did I. You know what I mean? But when I switched over to the Alpha, man, it was just like ong like Donkey Kong. Um,
But
you know, this is
what
like
is
I
the
said.
deal? Like, what is the deal with these baits? Because I mean, it's a countdown bait with two props on it. Like, what's so special about it? What?
Yeah, what it does is I'll tell you. When you throw this bad boy out here, first of all, when it falls, it does this. It'll go side to side to side to side. And it doesn't fall this way and it doesn't fall that way. It literally falls like perfectly straight.
Oh, okay.
And right, and when it falls, it's doing this. And I'll be very honest with you. Well, the line that I'm throwing is high vis yellow. And the reason why I like that high vis yellow is just like them dinger slingers that are out there, especially George. He's a big dinger slinger. When that bait starts to go down and it's fluttering down like this, they'll smoke that thing, and all you see is the line go boing. And many times I've thrown that out, and I've watched that line jump even before I get it counted down to where I want it. That happened a couple
Really?
times today. Couple of times today. So, anyways, that as it's falling, it's doing that little shimmy, right? It's doing that little shimmy. So it's throwing off some flash, and then you just start reeling it in. And when you start reeling it in, the props start moving, right? Which is cool, but it still does this side to side to side, and it's just so subtle. And it's, you know, some days you just feel the weight. You know, you just feel the
Yeah.
weight, and you just lean back on them.
Right.
And today, yeah, they just smashed it. And I'll tell you though, on this alpha, because I really like the alpha, I like some of the attention to detail that they've done on this. You can see this little part right here up on this bait. It actually, the way that
Yeah.
it's humped
Yeah.
back and the way that it comes down, there's really been a lot of work. I like the big eyes on it. You know what I mean? And they've
Right.
got some funky colors. I sent you some pictures of my spy bait collection, and you'll see some custom colors that I got there.
Well, I mean, okay, fine. You want to really get into that? I thought we already had this issue before. Look at this.
Yeah, we got a bit of an issue.
Like
That's just that's
we discussed this before, Danny.
I know.
And now
I don't
this.
know.
There's this. What about this, Danny?
Yeah, yeah, I know. But you know what? You see this one. See some of these. There's some beautiful colors up in here, man. It just works. You know what I
But
mean?
I
It just
have
works.
two. I have two.
Well, I don't know how many 5 pounders you got today. How many
Yeah,
did you
but I
catch today?
don't ask me how many jigs I have. That's the thing. So,
Well, I bet you I got you on that one too.
yeah, well, you might. I wouldn't put anything past you. My God.
You know, but I'll tell you though, bud, when you're looking at balsam and you're looking at tri lakes, again, I haven't caught a fish over 4 pounds on them on tri lakes, but you know they're definitely a 15-pound
Well,
getter.
Georgie says he catches them on Tri Lakes.
Does he? Yeah. Well,
Yes,
Georgie
yeah, he's
keeps telling
saying.
us that he doesn't tell us anything where he's fishing there. I don't believe him.
Yeah,
Pictures
I
and
know.
he's
We used to be in the same
waypointing and
park
that.
too, and he never told me nothing. I don't know,
Not
man.
cool, man.
Yeah, I know. It's not cool.
Not cool. But look, quality hardware, man.
Yeah.
I do not change anything on these things. Not a thing. Not a thing. The other thing is look at the eye. It's got the down eye on it.
Okay.
Hey
Yeah.
George, ask George if he got some of those off me. Ask him if he's got the any of the alphas.
Georgie, you got the alphas. He's gonna.
But I'll tell you, these things also don't just catch bass. You know, Ryan Long and a lot of the guys out there, man, they use them on rice. They're catching walleye. They're catching. I mean, of course, you catch sunfish and rockies and all those little
Really? Eh?
nut-faced little things. Oh yeah, they smash it too.
Huh.
But let's talk little bit about when. You know what I mean? So when they're following a jerk bait and they're not taking it, then I'll pull out the spy bait.
Yeah.
Um, and you can throw these things a mile. I bet you this alpha. I bet you I can throw this thing 60 yards. Um, I mean, it's just nuts. Now, you know the other thing is that's kind of cool. Stroll it.
Yeah, I've heard a lot of guys strolling with these things here out on Erie.
It's nuts. It's really, really, really nuts.
Really?
Yeah. I mean, Duo's got a lot of stuff, and I'm not sponsored by them at all, but I see some that I like and I gotta have some. But their jerk baits are pretty good, on Erie. See, now we should talk about this. You know the difference between a jerk bait and a minnow bait?
Jerk bait and a
Ooh.
minnow bait.
Oh, you didn't know this?
Oh, do tell, Danny. Do tell.
Oh, young sensei, I shall show you because somebody showed me.
Okay.
So, jerk baits. Oh, 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 oh,
Yeah.
oh. How does a rapala or rapala, how do they move?
Oh,
The old school wooden ones.
yeah.
Remember?
Yeah.
We
Yeah.
talked about the roll.
Yeah.
The roll. They roll,
Yeah.
right? So when you look at some of the minnow baits out there, and some of the Japanese baits are just fabulous for this. And there's some of them that I specifically use to stroll in the river in Niagara.
Hmm.
And guys are out there trying to do it with a jerk bait. They're trying to do it with a mega bass, and it's just not happening
Hmm.
because the constant current doesn't allow a jerk bait to go side to side.
To do what
But
it does best. Yeah.
right, but if you've got yourself a minnow bait that goes like this,
Hmm.
you throw that out there and you hold it in the current, and all it does is this. Just holds in the current, just does this.
It just goes back and forth.
Yeah, it just goes side to side, like just rolls. That's all it does. Some of the OSPs do that. Um, some of the duos do that. The Duo 90 is just killer in the Niagara River. I mean, you just stand on them. Some guys are using swim baits doing that, but I like to use the jerk or the minnow bait because you got two great big trebles, and when you get him, you get him. You know, but yeah, man, I don't. I keep it pretty simple. I throw them as far as I can. Again, off some of the weed edges in balsam, great bait.
Right.
Not really much of a follow up bait. You know what I mean? I'm not throwing it out there if something blows up on a top water or something like that. That's just not happening. But maybe where you would throw a spinner bait, or maybe you would throw a swim bait, or where you would throw a jerk bait, something just a little bit more subtle. And the great thing is, you can count them down, and they'll hold their depth.
I heard.
They'll hold their depth.
I heard these things really shine when you're trying to catch suspended fish too. Has that been your experience as well?
Yeah, and especially in Erie, before those fish get locked down on the bottom, when that water temperature is like 60, low 60s, and those fish are kind of suspended, it's definitely a great way. Some guys use crankbaits, but some there's a Martin out there. They'll just throw this bad boy out there and they'll stroll it, and they just smoke them.
Are we talking about Marty, who's in my club? Marty?
Not
I don't want to even
sure.
Marty. I don't want to even to attempt to pronounce his last name. Marty.
Yes.
Okay. Yeah, he's in my
Yeah.
club.
Great. I think he's part of the Duo Pro staff.
Oh, is he?
I learned. Yeah, I learned a lot of stuff from him and from Sebastian Roy, or Seabass. He's got his own channel. Him and I are we're pretty close that way. So
Okay.
um, I was talking to him today. Poor guy, he was out there on Simcoe helping people out, towing sea doers and broken
Oh,
down
really?
sea doos, and helping people take jerk bait hooks out of their legs. And I'm
Uh,
like, man, I'm smashing them over here. He goes, I can't. I'm towing some boat. I'm like, what? Really?
really? Yeah.
Drop them off at the dock. Tell them to take an Uber back to their cottage and get their trailer and get back fishing. So,
Um,
anyways,
you tried any other brands other than the Duo Realis stuff?
I have. I tried the culprit ones.
Yeah.
I tried I think Rapala has one. I have not tried the Megabass one, but I don't know. I think you see the amount of duos that I have. They were the
Yeah.
originators. They know what's going on. Like, really, what's better than a real chatterbait? Like, really?
Yeah. Exactly. Yeah.
Jackhammers. Like, nothing beats a jackhammer.
Yeah.
We don't need a sledgehammer and a rubber hammer and all that. Them cats, I don't know. I just never been into that. So I stay loyal to the original, the OEMs, the original equipment manufacturers.
Well, and they've
Let
done the
them
work and
innovate.
the research on these things too, right, to make them better, right? So
And
yeah,
they're priced fair. You know what I
yeah.
mean? I mean, what are they, George? What are they? 12, 14, 15, $18 or something like that?
I think it's 16.99 or something,
Yeah, I don't know. I buy them in boxes. I'm a fool.
something like that.
Yeah.
You buy them by the you buy them
But
by the
I'm
skid.
telling you, dude, every single color I have, I have 12. You just buy 12. You don't buy 2 or 3 or 4.
How did this manifest itself, Danny? I'm trying to get an understanding here.
So what happened was, uh,
No, just the sickness in general.
I'm gonna hold on. I have to lay down on the couch. There was more than one time a few years ago. There was two classics for sure. There was a Canadian Open for sure. Just some big money tournaments where I was smoking them on a certain color blade, combination spinnerbait, and a certain weight, and I'm tagging them. And then day three, I lost two of them to a pike, couple of pike. And I went, well, you know what? I know that it's a half ounce with a number 4 gold and a number 3 silver willow, but it doesn't matter. I'll just throw the double gold. I'll
Yeah,
throw the double silver. Never caught a fish after 11 o'clock. We ended up coming one fish short. And, that happened in Classic. Two second place Classics were, you know, again, I ran out of a certain color and I tried everything else and didn't work. I went back the next day with the right color and smoked them. And I said to that day, for the fact of, you look at the difference of buying, a dozen or maybe a dozen so much, but if you buy one or two, you're into it for 28 bucks. If you buy four, you're into it for 56 bucks. How many times have you been on the water when you would say, I will pay $24 for
yeah, to
that?
get what you need. Yeah.
And I just
Well,
vowed I would never do it again.
yeah. No, I don't blame you. I don't blame you. But I mean, it turns into a real sickness, doesn't it? David, he made it. Can you believe it,
Oh my
ladies and
gosh.
gentlemen? Here he is. Dave, how's it going, buddy?
It's going, man. I apologize tremendously.
I don't see him yet.
There he is.
Am I on here?
There he is.
Yeah, gotcha, bud.
Yeah,
Man,
I'm like your
glad
worst
you're
nightmare
here.
with technology. I'm just gonna let you know now.
Oh, that's no problem, buddy. I'm glad to have you on. Thanks for coming
Yeah,
on, man. It's awesome.
Well, thanks for inviting me. We had almost like this internet blackout here on the south end of town, and so I got your email, I got your message, and I was fumbling through, and I'm like, I know I'm supposed to be somewhere. So, anyways, we are connected now, so I do apologize. Thank you.
That is awesome. Well, Danny and I were talking about this.
Stone-fired pizza. We got
Save that for me. I'll take that. I'll take that.
a pizza oven. I have a pizza oven in my backyard. Stone-fired, wood-fired pizza going here. I've been chomping away. It's been good.
And it's Canada Day, so you can't beat that.
Yeah, no doubt, no doubt.
So, Dave, Danny and I were just talking about the spy bait deal. Like, I'll say to you, like I said to him, I'll be honest, I got onto this last year, but didn't even really get onto it. I heard about it, ran out and bought a couple, and never really gained the confidence with it. But I mean, I keep hearing about this bait, and a lot of guys are on it. And like, what is the key to the success of this bait?
Can you grab those two baits for me?
It's I'm going to kind of make it a little bit humorous. I've said this before, but this is probably your easiest, most difficult technique to learn. And if you can accept that part of it, you're on the right track right in the very beginning. There is literally a learning curve to this. It's so simple. You just cast it out and retrieve it, right? I mean, that's really pretty basic. But just like probably the first time that you picked up a spinnerbait, you've learned really quickly over your months or years of fish that spinnerbait, certain things that you do with that cast and retrieve can mean the difference between 8 pounds in a tournament and 24 pounds in a tournament with the exact same spinnerbait. So, like I'm talking about, maybe you're running a spinnerbait into grass.
Is my connection?
Is your connection?
Yeah, you're good, Danny.
Am I good?
Yeah, you're good, Dave. We got you.
Okay,
So we're losing the connection here. Is that you, man, or is it me?
It's probably you. Yeah, it's probably you.
I think I probably had Danny's contagious disease there as well earlier today. I did about 4 podcasts, and every other one went bad. You know.
Oh, is that right?
So yeah. So and just connection wise, but I think we're clear. So hopefully he'll be okay and he'll get back on par.
Yeah, he'll be back on. So go ahead, Dave.
So yeah, so first I commend you for even going out there and saying what the heck is spy baiting and should I really get onto it? I promise you, I won't lie to you. This is a game changer. It is a tournament winner. It is a big fish presentation. It truly is. I've done some pretty good trophy hunting as far as fish goes in my career for the last 30 years, and I probably have compressed my big fish catches under this technique, maybe more so than any other technique that I've ever done. I've done a ton of them, from 2-pound test all the way up to 20-pound tests. So and again, I don't have all the answers, but I will say that this particular technique was done research-based. It was, I don't want to call it scientific, but it really was research-based, applying the lure to the fish behavior and obviously incorporating that into the technique. So the first thing I can tell you is you really do got to get stubborn. You've heard it said, take everything out of your boat and fish that one thing. That really was a cliche for me because I do a pretty good job of compartmentalizing things. So now I can honestly say that that's something that you want to do with this technique. The only thing that you'll need as far as a variance is just in color patterns. Take a natural pattern, and we can go through that obviously. Take a reflective pattern, and then take a pattern that I call that illuminates a little bit for low light conditions, like a pearl ghost or chartreuse shad type of pattern. Those are your 3 colors, to use as you're going through getting familiar with this technique. And you can use one lure. Well, I have now 6 of them for a good reason, and we'll have a 7th one in the picture later on this summer. But you can pick just the G-Fix 80 spin bait, just that one, in 6-pound test, and go to work and learn the technique. And you can do that with a drop shot rod. So you don't have to go out now and get a $500 or $700 spy bait rod and a $500, $600 high-end reel. You can do it with your mid-range gear just to start to learn about it.
Well, David, can I just, let me interrupt you here for a sec? Sure. I want to, Danny, my co-host here, has a sickness, and I just want to show you what we're talking about here. Okay, this is part of the sickness, and this is the other part of it. It's ridiculous. Yeah, the guy's got issues.
Yeah. Well, those are good issues to have. He probably has more spy baits than I do.
That sounds like it. Yeah.
I was just telling a guy the other day, we just introduced the 100 series, which is a bigger one. And now everyone has that. I only have the prototypes. So. Yeah.
Oh, okay. You've got the new I-Class coming out too, right?
Yeah. Yeah, so in the I-Class, what the I-Class series is, I think Danny's getting an echo.
Yeah, I don't know what he's doing here.
Okay.
We'll try that.
What the I-Class series is basically a boost of effect as far as enhancing the lure, doing some things to enhance the lure, and then also to make the lure bulletproof. And those were my goals. Our first batch of spy baits that came out were immaculate, perfect. And then we went from 4 different factories consolidating into one. So those skilled workers did not all end up at that one factory because it's in a different city location. And now you're going back in and retraining guys. And the old design allowed you to remove the screws so that I could modify the lure. So I had a whole list of mods that I used to do with it.
Okay.
But if that screw wasn't mounted into the mounting block in the back and chemically welded correctly, you would have a loose screw, no pun intended, but you would have a loose screw.
Hey, Bob, check. Can you hear me? Can you guys hear me?
I got you, Danny. Yeah.
Perfect. So now that I'm back, All right. So now, do you really think I got an issue? Do you think I
No,
have an issue?
no. You see, I would be in your basement with you. So we'll share in the addiction.
I'm telling you, brother, you got to see. It's actually it's kind of sad. But I'll tell you, we were talking earlier about this stuff, and I'm telling you, a lot of guys will be surprised that I actually throw this bait because, I won a lot of money fishing a jig and flipping a jig, and
Sure.
then when I started catching smallmouth, and I became pretty proficient with that jerk bait and started catching a lot of big smallmouth and big largemouth. But a really good friend of mine, two really good friends of mine, got me onto this a few years ago. One of them is Martin, and the other one is Sebastian Roy. And Sebastian's a super guy. We work together, in our other job. And I'll tell you, these guys got me onto this bad boy here, onto the 90, right? Or this is the 80. I don't throw a lot of 80s. I threw mostly 90s, and and don't look at that color. You don't see that color. But then when you cats came out with the alpha, I sent some pictures today to Bob. I was standing on them today on this alpha. I throw two colors when I was on Simcoe. Water's clear. You can see down 15, 18 feet.
Yeah.
I throw the white one, and then I throw this one. And, the trigger for me, when I'm throwing this, and I'll share with you what my setup is. Maybe I'm doing it right or wrong, but I'm throwing it on 15-pound braid, and then I'm throwing 10-pound fluoro, but I like 8 to 10 feet of line and fluorocarbon. And the reason why I like that is the same as my jerk bait. When you get them big giant smallmouth, and they're so strong and so mean, and if they had hands, they would punch you in the mouth. So when they take that last dive at the side of the boat, I like to have fluorocarbon through the guides. I like to have it on the reel, because there's nothing worse than looking at that rod and it's bending, and you're seeing that knot between the fourth and fifth guide, and you're like, how many Caesars did I have when I tied that knot, right?
Yeah.
But I find that it's worked really well up here, when they're following a jerk bait. And today they were doing that, right? I was jerking hard, jerking the jerk bait, and they would come, and then they kind of fade away, right? And I'm like, you know what? You son of a gun, I got something for you. And I threw on that spy bait, and I bomb it. I'm 320 pounds. I fire that thing on a 7'6" rod. I'm throwing it like the keys to my old girlfriend's house. And you count it down 3, 4, 5, and start reeling it in. And sometimes people say just the rod loads up. They were knocking slack in it.
Yeah.
They were knocking slack in it. But you talk about that, David, you talk about that little technical problem that with these things, man, for me, I lost a couple fish, and then, I reached out, and you reached back out to me, and I put some crazy glue on there and fired that back in there. And then I went back and caught 50 fish on the same bait.
And like I was saying, the original, and I'm going to say there was thousands that we produced of this thing with zero flaws. So I'm just a straight up guy, and my thing is, I'm a fisherman first. I've been in the fishing industry and the JDM side of things for over 30 years. Was one of the first guys out in the U.S. to acquire several different types of Japanese jerk baits here in North America that weren't even known to society at that time. So I've always been a junkie that way.
You should have seen our show with Nick and myself talking about jerk baits. Dude, we talked an hour just on jerk baits, and it was supposed to be about jerk baits and crank baits and spinning baits, and we just talked about jerk baits. And you think I got a lot of these bad boys? You got to see my jerk bait collection. I even have some mega bass ones where the guys are going, oh, you have that the one? Oh yeah. I got some ones from Japan. People are going, you send over. I have some +3s. But before I get off on that tangent, because I do, I had, just before you came on, my illustrious friend and I were having a conversation. The difference between, and I was taught this by a very good fisherman, between the jerk baits and the minnow bait, right? There's a big difference. And that's what I love about the duos is, they make great jerk baits, but they also have that nice subtle rolling action. So when you get into the Niagara River and you want to get onto some of them smallmouth, and you'll see those cats throwing a jerk bait out there. We were talking about this earlier. Throw a jerk bait out there and just try to hold it in the current. You throw a Duo out there and you hold it in the current, and it just goes like this, rolls. It just rolls, and then you know who comes like this.
Yeah, no, I'm a jerkbait freak for many moons. But you know, I think for guys to get to the point where they can actually feel comfortable, I call it a learning curve with spy baiting. They're really going to have to spend some time on it. I've tried to shorten the lesson plan with them. The pros, the tour, and I know about 200 different pros that I've worked with in some capacity, one way or another. You know, and the guys will go, man, dude. They'll call me up on the phone and go, dude, I'm not getting bit on this thing. I mean, I'm not getting bit. And so at that point in time, I start looking at breaking down their execution. What are they doing? What are they fishing? What type of topography are they going after?
Yeah.
And I can bring you kind of a poor example, but several times I've had pros say, yeah, I'm fishing a hump. Okay, right out in the middle of the lake. It should have fish on it. I drop shot on it, didn't get anything, but you told me to stay here and fish the spin bait. And I tried, man, and I didn't get bit. And then I go through and I say, well, how close were you to the hump? Where was your cast? Where did your cast end? And a lot of times I used to find the guys would actually fall short. They would throw that bait on top of the hump or what they perceived to be the back of the hump. And then they would engage the reel and start line incorporation, and they'd get a pendulum swing away from their topography. And I measured that in some of the research that I was doing earlier with spy baiting. It falls so nice, and you know, the fall action on the spin bait, especially our Realis 80 and 80G fix, is just mesmerizing. But if it's nowhere in the vicinity of the visual plane that fish is looking at, or it's too far away, because we're only talking 3 inches on our standard baits, right? You start getting too far away from those fish, and they're going to have a hard time seeing it. They can see really far. It's not like they can't see really far, but things get noticeable, you know, as they get closer. So you start to swing a bait away from your topography, and all of a sudden you're not even in the striking distance, you know. So so one of those focal points was making sure that guy, I call it hit the back 40, where I was getting guys to come up to the hump and consciously think about throwing 40 feet past their target.
Dude, when I talk to people about fishing this, I'm like, listen, if you ever played football, you got to lead the wide receiver, man. You got to lead him. You know, you got to lead the cover. You know, throw it past. You know, hit that cut 7-iron.
And there's good reason for this. It's not just, okay, so that you can hit that target, but it also allows you time to get everything lined up. And I could show you one cast where cast can go disastrous. You got 6 or 8 pound test on a spinning reel. You make a cast and you're casting in 25-mile-an-hour wind, and all of a sudden your line's way over there, 40 feet, the belly of your line. So, you know, there's certain things that you guys know, especially Canada gets plenty of wind. You guys know when you start to cast a bait that is a light presentation, or that's going to get disrupted by the wind, you start to insert your rod tip immediately after the cast. So you cut surface tension with your line, keep your rod tip in the water, and now you're not battling all that wind that was above the surface line, and now you've got a lure that comes in straight. So some of that concept or conceptual thinking is the same for spy baiting. You're taking a tiny little lure, making a super long cast. You want to make sure everything is in line before it reaches its target. Yeah. So now you start reeling, you pull all, you know, you're pulling all the slack out of the line. The lure's running exactly like it needs to. As you get good with spy baiting, you'll notice this. You'll start to feel the vibration of the lure, the pulsing of the lure through the line and through the rod tip. When you first start, it's not, I mean, someone could hit you in the back of the head with a rock. It wouldn't even compare. I did not feel anything. As you get used to it, you'll start to see it all happening in front of you. So there is a sensory piece to it as well. But that long cast gets you lined up.
Yeah.
After you're lined up,
for sure,
then you can kind of slow down or speed up or let it fall. So let's say that you're 40 feet from your target and you want to get it, and you're 6 feet in depth and you want to get it 8 or 10 feet. You can stop before your target and let it shimmy down to its depth and then start again. So you can just iron out things before you get to the sweet spot. And that's another reason why you want to make that long cast. You were talking about the leader. You know, this is a long time ago. I created a line presentation called tee-shotting. It came from the concept of top shotting. I don't know if you guys ever heard of that, but that's a saltwater line presentation. Hollow braid, and then an insert. They used monofilament, and later on there was different companies that provided fluorocarbon that had better elongation rates in them, so they could actually use this, and they would manage 200-pound tuna on a fishing rod like never before. And so top shotting became a real big thing. But when I was looking at the length of the top shot, and I actually experimented with top shot for bass fishing, it had some real positive strengths. The only problem is that the braid works as a Chinese finger cuff, and it's just a lot of body and mass. So when the wind hit it only took like a 5-mile-an-hour wind, and you got that thing parachuting across your plane. So it didn't have all the perfect lineup, but gosh, if it did, it would be a deadly way to manage fish. But I took the concept of 25 and 35 foot fluorocarbon and incorporated that in my jerkbait fishing years ago. This is 15 years ago or so. And so, back then fluorocarbon kind of came on the scene, and you heard the pros talking, hey, yeah, you save money. You just use 2 feet of fluorocarbon, or you use 4 feet, or you use 6 feet, right? Because that stuff's dang expensive. Well, as you guys were talking about, you run that knot through those guides under force, and pretty soon you start wearing the knot. It actually starts wearing, and you can start popping fish off. So having that long leader, if you do tee shot, having the long leader, then when the fish gets up to the boat, 20 feet away or 30 feet away, the knot is already incorporated in the spool. So you're fighting the main line at that point in time. The other reason I use it is because I use the fluorocarbon, because fluorocarbon is about 42% heavier than nylon 6 or monofilament, as you guys know. Well, that specific gravity actually comes, and after it breaks the water surface, it actually starts to bow. It pulls the bait and it pulls the main line down. So that weight can work as a ballast in front of the lure, if that makes sense.
Yeah, absolutely.
Guiding that tiny little lure. So even if you stop the retrieve and you've got a little bit of current, that fluorocarbon actually helps pull that bait in line. So that's another reason why I use fluorocarbon, or I use the T-shot presentation.
It's interesting. We were talking about line earlier, and some of the reasons when Bob was asking, why, how does it work and everything. I said to him, for me, especially with the Alpha 72, and I really am a big fan of this, is the side to side as this thing drops is epic. It really is. So what I use is a high vis yellow line. And it's also, like I was saying about one of the guys is in the gallery there, if you're an old dinger slinger and you like to watch that throw that Senko out there, that's dinger, and you watch the line go doing. I cannot tell you how many times I've thrown this thing out there and I'm counting it down to 18, 19, and I see the yellow line go boink. I'm like, he got it, So, the yellow line has always been good for me, and that's why, again, I use an extra long leader, because, the last thing you need is a big smallmouth going, look at the rainbow. It's a pretty rainbow,
Well, speaking of the countdown there, you guys are obviously throwing this thing on slack line. You counting it down on slack line?
I use both. So, and I can go through each lure, but if we just take the 80 G fix and put it on 6-pound test on a drop shot, when you make that cast out there, that particular bait, you want to let some slack out just to get the maximum depth that you want and the maximum tracing that you get. So it'll fall straighter with slack, just like a jig. If you threw a jig out, pulled some line out, and your jig falls a little bit straighter. However, sometimes I don't do that, especially if I'm looking at schooling fish. I'll make the cast, I'll click the reel over, and I'll get a semi-slack. There'll be a bow in the line, but I'll get a semi-slack and starts to pull the bait immediately. But I'm actually looking at trying to get that bait to slowly descend, at a 3% grade into that position where I want it to go. So I may be trying to sneak in just above the bait fish line or something to that effect, or come in, or come in underneath the bait fish. So I will sometimes click the reel handle over right away and start my retrieve, but I'm also being specific about that. But if you want to get the quick depth and get it to shimmy down, then you would let out slack for sure.
Yeah, I would say probably if I'm fishing, Bob, if I'm fishing in open water, if I'm fishing Simcoe, Erie, Lake Ontario, it's falling on a slack line. But if I'm fishing, say, Balsam Lake or any of the other weedline lakes where I'm fishing some weed smallmouth, I'm keeping it engaged. One other thing that I want to jump in here when I look at these things is, just the hardware that you use on this is stellar. And never change the hooks. The split rings are the right size. It's just really an all-around impressive bait. You've really done a fabulous job with this stuff. I really am impressed.
Thank you very much. And yeah, I'll go back to our little bit of progression with the spin bait. We talked about the original model, and now the new series is called I-Class. And I'm encouraging anglers to find that bait in particular. So you go in your store, you'll see the sticker on the box that says I-Class. And the reason why is because we took that componentry, reinforced it, made it bulletproof, reliable in that regard. And then we were able to add just a little bit more performance into these baits. If again, I go back to, I can cast that 80 G fix 130 feet sometimes with, the average drop shot setup. So you're talking quite a great distance with a tiny little bait. So we were able to squeeze more performance out of the I-Class series than we had even in the original. So that's another reason why I'm excited about that. But it'll keep guys from any troubles, and it'll keep guys. And the other thing, you were speaking about it earlier, Big D, the hooks. Our hooks are actually from a private company. We designed the hook, and they make it for us, and it has a nano coating on it. It's kind of an industry first. There's other companies in Japan that have utilized that technology, but we were up there as well doing that. And that hook is so sharp. The penetrability is so significant. It's almost mind-blowing. You can penetrate your finger or a layer or surface of material so quickly. I mean, I also say, please be careful. I'm not joking. The amount of guys that have flown in and fished with me to learn about spy baiting have hooked their hands has gone up like 30% than it used to. And including me, I used to pride myself. I went 22 years without one hook in my hand. I watched everyone else have it. And then I actually got a couple hooks in my hand. Actually, that day 3 times. So I've lost the record. But
that's funny. That is funny.
Those hooks are awfully sharp. They really are. And I go back to, I used to know, well, I still do, Ron Stalling and TJ Stalling. I don't know if you guys, TJ has passed away since, but he really was an innovator in the fishing industry. He was out of Alabama, but he came out with the X-point hooks. I don't know if you remember the X-point hooks, right?
Yes.
Yeah.
Well, they were way beyond their time. I mean, they were so far ahead of the rest of the competition. It was shocking. And they did a gram test where they actually tested the pressure of the point and how much pressure it would take to penetrate. And back then, I still have a bunch of those hooks. And I use them still to this day. But back then, that hook was so sharp in comparison to the other ones. And the nano coating on these hooks now are even more sharp. So
well, one of your pro staffs actually has his own brand of hooks, drop shot hooks that I use as well. And I think they have that same the same type of a coating.
Mm-hmm.
But yes. I just think it's a great bait, and it's awesome. But actually, Bob, do you have some of the pictures of those fish that I jacked today?
No, I have them on my phone.
Oh, I sent them to him. I sent Bob this morning a text at about 7:15 or 7:30. I caught my first fish on the Duo Alpha, and I said, I am gonna paste them today. And I did. So look at some of these.
Oh yeah.
I don't know how many fives.
Don't mind my broken phone.
Oh, I thought that was your backdrop there. That's
no.
Yeah, no. It was a backdropper. I dropped it right on my driveway today.
But I don't know how many fives I caught today. I don't know if you've ever been up to Lake Simcoe, but Lake Simcoe here is stellar. I mean, 30-pound bags in the fall, lots of 29s. And this time of year, the fish are up and they are good to go.
Well, it's so funny. When I was a kid, I used to dream about fishing in Canada, and the way I heard about Canada waters was through In Fisherman back then. Steve Quinn and all those guys, and I'd watch. they'd fly in, they'd take a little canoe and they'd go in some backwater area and they'd catch all these smallmouth. And I was always intrigued with smallmouth. And those were some really stellar visuals. I mean, just getting the idea of your guys' landscape and some of the beautiful country up there. But the truth is, in my opinion, probably, at least at this point in time, most world-class smallmouth are coming out of your guys' region. I'm not disputing the fact that in the southern region, there's still some giant smallmouth to be had.
Yeah, the Pickwicks are kicking them out. The Pickwicks are kicking them out. But man, when you see the St. Lawrence River and and I'm telling you, brother, we are dialed into it. You know, when you watch the FLW or the BASS or some of the BFLs when they come up here, and the top 15 anglers are all the Canadians, and I mean, and two of the top guys here in Ontario and in Canada are part of your pro staff. Martin is absolutely stellar. You've seen the productions that he puts together. And Sebastian, just amazing fisherman. He sent me a picture of a donkey he caught today.
Yeah, I saw that.
Did he send it to you?
He sent it to me. I helped him with the color that he has. The Arctic Burn, it's called. It's a kind of a pale yellow green.
I got it.
It looks really weird in the water, but I have some research behind that color, and so we worked on that color for him, especially for low light, early morning kind of conditions. And he just whacked a giant on that one, but he's pretty happy about his latest catches lately. So.
Oh, I know. Listen.
Nice.
We were texting each other all day, and I'm like, I kept sending him pictures. I just got another one. He goes, I'm pulling a guy on a broken sea-doo. I said, that's because you're too nice of a guy. But I'm gonna have to go check my wall for the Arctic Burn. Either that, or we'll have to have a performance review at work. I told him to log in. I told him you were going to be on tonight. So
what about retrieves, guys? What are we looking at for retrieves?
Yeah, so the guy that's impatient, I'll start with first. That guy, you know, I talk about trying his best to maximize his time. He's the type of guy that's going to go whack an area, and then afterwards he's just going to leave, and he's going to think it's done, and he's going to go on to spot number 2. Before he leaves, I ask him to make about 3 or 4 casts. That's it. His first cast is going to be out. He's going to get half the distance. So if he's fishing, if the fish are in 15 foot of water, or let's just say the bottom of the lake is 15, I want him to make his first cast and put it somewhere around 7 or 8 feet and come through that area. And that retrieve is nice and slow. All you're trying to do is get the bait, the props going. The lure has 4 different actions to it that are built in, so you're not having to impart any action to this bait. You're just allowing it to do itself, and it's a hard thing for guys to conceptualize. Wait a minute, I'm just stand here.
I have a certificate that says I have ADHD. I'm telling you, I'm reeling this thing. When Sebastian says, "Brother, you got to throw this," I'm like, "No, I can't do it. No." But, you know, when you catch your first 5, you're like, yes, I can do this.
So it's just a slow deal then.
Yeah, and it's almost like you want to, you know, when you pitch a jig in the back of a tree, you, at that moment in time, your focus is on that jig. It's not anywhere else. You're not looking at the bird. You're not looking at the ladies. There's nothing else going on. You surgically put that bait in there, and you have this expectation that something's going to happen. You're going to contact her, or you're going to get bit. And that focal point is what you want to use during your retrieve. You really want to spend time paying attention to your retrieve. I had 4 guys that flew out to fish with me. This is a while ago. And their first several bites, they didn't even know they had gotten bit, because you can get bit several ways on this bait. But one is actually the fish comes up behind the bait, keeps coming to you, and now you have big slack in your line. You don't even realize it. You're just realizing it's almost like you got cut off. And then at the end of it, you get this big pop. And I can tell you that happened several times where the guys had no clue. And I told them, you just got bit. You got a fish on. And a lot of times those are really big fish that do that. So concentrating on the line, watching the line is really, really important. And for the impatient guys, make that first cast, divide that depth, come across your cover, and then reel in the next cast. Just put it down about a foot or 2 from the bottom. That's it. So you're covering your area in basically 2 casts. Now you may want to change direction and shoot from another angle, but you can do this in basically 2 casts on a spot or target area that you are just convinced the big fish utilize sometime during that day. I have a story. I have a buddy who's he's a trophy hunter. I have a couple of them that we've been friends for many, many years. We've chased records. And these guys are no joke. I mean, 200 fish over 10 pounds kind of thing, in a year and a half. These are hammers. And so these guys don't play around. This is like going out and hunting big elk or something. So he called me up one day and he goes, I have this tournament coming up. It's a small tournament, but I have these big fish. And every other year I'm able to pull one of these big fish from this boulder field. He said, do you think spy baiting would work on that? I'm like, oh, absolutely. You do need to do this. And so he goes out there, and I've told the story many, many a time, but he goes out there, he makes one cast, he drops that spin bait just a couple feet over the boulder field, and it just locks up, comes tight. He's like, oh, I've got a decent one. I've got a good one. He pulls it in. It's over 10 pounds.
Wow.
On the spinner. So he puts it in, and his knees are clacking. This guy usually doesn't even get excited if the fish is 7 or 8 pounds. He's just one big fish hunter. And he puts the fish in the live well. He had to sit down before he made the second cast because he said, David, I couldn't believe it. And I had 5-pound test on, mind you. And so he sits there for a second, captures some oxygen, and then goes back at it, makes the second cast, puts another one over 10 pounds in the boat. 2 large mouth over. So in 2 fish, he had over 22 pounds.
Wow.
And that's just a cool story, but it really talks about. Now he's a very, very good angler with big swim baits, and he knows how to position the lure. So he's got that. His learning curve was much more, I should say, smaller or shorter than a lot of guys. But he just basically did that. He cut the distance in half, and then the next stroll was close to the boulder field, and he popped those 2 big fish. Meanwhile, guys had come and gone on that spot multiple times with multiple lures. So this is a guy that went into an area that was obviously pressured, and these are big fish, so they pay attention to the boat coming in. They can see the boat from 40, 70 feet away, and they move off their topography, and they kind of just watch what's going on. So these are really, really cute in fish, but he did get lucky enough to pop those 2, and he was elated, but he said he was a wreck for the whole day. He was just a wreck.
Well, speaking of that, David, is that like I heard rumors that this bait was specifically designed to catch suspended fish. Is that true?
Yes, and that's where we get into that dividing that distance between the bottom and where the fish are positioned. A lot of times too, you'll go over your electronics and you go, well, there's the bait line, and then you look again and you say, well, wait a minute, there's the bait line, but the big fish are actually another 8 or 10 feet away from them. What's going on? Well, those fish sometimes will just what I call start to corral or push the bait. And they're usually big fish. They don't need to go in and hit those fish right away. They'll actually want those minnows to get accustomed to them. It's a behavioral response. When those big fish move in, the minnows start to get really nervous. And then over time, they start to settle in. And these big fish know it. So they'll stay along that school until their parallels get tighter and tighter and tighter, and then they'll go in and they'll feed. But these guys, these big fish know this, so they set up really, really a lot of times right near the bait per se, but maybe they're deeper, they're 8 feet deeper, and just kind of pushing the bait nice and easy. And then when they're ready, they'll make their strike. They're not dummies; they know what they're doing for sure.
Yeah. I'm just thinking, Danny, of some of those islands off of Rice there, where those. When they're not in feeding on the shoals there and they're suspended in 12 feet over, 30 or whatever.
Absolutely.
I'm thinking that might be a good deal to try this here.
Well, I'm going to tell you from experience, it works.
Yeah.
And again, I have a couple pro staffers up there in Canada. And I have a buddy up there that he was one of the first people probably that I told about spy baiting up in Canada. And he just did not care, and he's a very, very good angler. I'm not going to mention his name. You guys can seek him out later and harass him and razz him, but he's a very good angler, won many tournaments, and he's very proficient at what he does, so no fault there. But it just took him a long time to start to conceptualize spy baiting, even though he's a very, very good angler, a winner. And so, like I said, there's just a learning curve. Take your time with it. Be stubborn about it. At the same time, be good to yourself, because you're going to go out and I've had it happen where even on days where I just knew that the fish were going to eat, they just didn't eat that well. And I may have only caught 4 fish, but I'll tell you what, a lot of the times if that happens, I'm catching 4 big fish. I'm not catching 4 dinks. I'm catching 4 big fish. And I tell the story of 2 different anglers. I took them out on separate days. Both of them have won boats in tournaments. So these guys are you know, aren't beginners per se or novice, and very experienced. And we went out and we started fishing some humps and some topography that lifted off the bottom a little bit. And they usually roll up on those spots and drop shot on them, and they'll catch the fish. Well, the current wasn't going, so that now tends to pull those fish off a little bit. The fish will get in the current and they kind of get tight to the structure. But as the current dissipates, and they'll start to situate a little bit differently. So he throws up there and does a drop shot and doesn't catch anything. And I move in and I say, can I just make a few casts? He did not know what lure I had. It was totally a prototype at the time. And I made 2 casts there. I ended up with 1 fish that was 4 pounds. 4.5 pounds. I did that 5 times. So 1 fish basically on each one of these spots. And I mean, I ended up with 25 pounds. Sorry, it was 4 spots, but I ended up with basically over 20 pounds. And again, it's only 1 fish off that spot. That's what I'm saying. This presentation is almost like big swim bait fishing. I don't know how much you guys do that now. I know the Canadians are finally, they're getting into it. And you guys have to battle the pike and stuff, but the guys that are getting into big swim baits are starting to learn this too now. You don't catch much fish.
Bob, I'll tell you, you get down, and that's one of the things, Bob. I don't know if you know what's been going on to Simcoe in the fall, but I'm telling you, I'm using 7, 8, 9-inch big giant swim baits. I'm throwing it I'm throwing it on a 7'6", a rod that I would throw a 3/4 ounce spinner bait on that. I'm throwing that thing on 15-pound braid. And I'm not kidding you, man. I am throwing that thing over 35, 40 feet of water, throwing it out there as far as I can. And I'm just slow rolling it through just below these schools of bait fish and whacking them.
Really?
Like, that's how these guys are catching these fish in the fall down in Kemperville Bay in this 30, 40, 50 feet of water. You know, count it down 25, 30 feet just below those schools of bait fish, those big swim baits. I mean, when you see a 5 and a 6 come up and he's got this great big swim bait in his face, you're like,
yeah, you know, and again, spy baiting, in fact, I talked about this. The guys that picked up spy baiting quickly or the quickest were the guys that have thrown multiple finesse rigs. I'm not talking about a Ned rig, an 8-pound or 10-pound test. I'm talking about multiple ways to really finesse fit. Those guys picked it up really quickly. But the second group was not a surprise to me, but I mean, to others it is, were the guys that throw the big 12 and 14-inch swim baits. Those guys picked up spy baiting immediately as well. Those were the 2 groups that really kind of learned the technique the quickest. The pros, some of the pros, I turned like Brandon Polinick onto it, a couple other pros, and then they were quick. Brandon was pretty quick. He was actually kind of a cool cat about it. He said to me one day, I don't know, man. It looks like it. I think it'll catch fish. You know, I think it's a pretty good lure. I'd see. And then a month later, he said, dude, I'm going to win on this. And that was his turning point. Now, I don't recall him ever winning on it, but I do know he made some money on it. But the point is that there's just going to be a learning curve. You just have to accept that it's just the way it is. I hate when the guys go out and they whack 25 pounds of fish their first outing, because then it's locked in their brain. So then they go right back to that same spot again, and those fish have moved or the conditions are different. And they're just heartbroken. So the guy that actually gets rewarded every now and then he can start to get really proficient. I go to all different types of lakes. I've been from Florida to California, from Mexico, up into a little bit of Canada. I've been over to the eastern part of the seaboard. I've been down into Texas. And the thing about this technique is you can honestly fish it anywhere. You really can. You can fish this bait anywhere. I've been told more times that this bait won't work than I've been told it works, than it will work. When a guy looks at it, I've been told more times, seriously, maybe 100, 120 times, yeah, that's a cool bait, but it's not going to work up into Canada. I won't mention any names. There was I'm going to say probably 25 guys over a course of time, prior to really introducing or getting it there, that were like, hey, bro, that's pretty cute little thing you got going on. But listen, You're not going to catch fish out there with it. Here, one thing is that even if it does work, the pike are going to tear it up. They're going to just cut your line, eat the bait. You're just going to have all these troubles. It's just not going to work up there. True story. And I don't necessarily disagree with those guys because their thinking is logical. But you know as well as I do, bass and pike, even if they're in the same area, behave differently. They're going to react differently to their stimulus. Bass goes after a bait fish, the pike will go after the bass sometimes, you know? So it's kind of like, and you guys know this better than I do, fishing around those fish, there's certain things that you do. There's certain ways you position your boat. There's certain things that you do that tend to not stimulate the pike as much it would be the bass. So you guys have that down. So guys that have predatory fish that, you know, bass are kind of the primo predator in most lakes, but there are lakes where there's other predator fish that take precedence, like stripers and pike and other fish. So you do have to learn about your environment a little bit, but you guys now know how powerful spy baiting is. The Johnson brothers, Corey and his brother, both of those guys are favorites of mine. I really do admire those guys, partly because they just put time in. They know they have to be on the water, and they don't.
Let me tell you something. Let me tell you something about them cats. I remember watching those kids grow up. I fished against their dad, and I'll tell you one thing: you'd be hard pressed to get to the ramp in the morning before Corey and Chris, and come off the water after Corey and Chris. You know, these cats, you're 100% right. They put their time in.
They were probably still there from the day before, Danny.
Yeah, true enough. True enough. But
yes, so those are two success stories around spy bait. But you guys have a bunch of anglers. The other thing I hear come up quite a bit is, dude, everyone's spy baiting. So what's that going to happen tournament time? You know, these fish are going to get exposed to it. I would worry very little about that, honestly. I had a guy in San Diego, young kid who was into tournament fishing. I'm going to say he kind of 3 or 4 years into it, but he was actually a pretty proficient angler. And he started spy baiting, getting rewarded early, and learned the technique. And he called me one day and he goes, "Man, I don't know, dude. I've got a 2-day tournament down here. One day's a afternoon, and then the other nighttime tournament. And then I wanted to throw this stuff, man. And there's just, everyone had one on their deck of their boat. I said, just relax. Because what's going to happen is everyone's going to throw it for the first 10 minutes in the tournament. And then they're not going to get bit. And then you're going to start catching fish. You're going to catch one here. You're going to catch one over there. You're going to catch one over there. And 5 fish later, you're going to be up in the top 20 doing your game. So you have to think about spy baiting. It kind of lines up with skill level too. Once the guy masters the technique, then his other skill sets that have made him so good also start to come into play. You know, but I've been all over the place where guys will say, get my boat, let's just go do it. And I've been put in some hard situations. I went down to Lake Casitas, and a guy said, "Listen, if you ever make it down to California, I'd really like to take you to Casitas." Well, Casitas used to be a world-class fishery. I mean, had 20 pounders in there, more so than some of the other reservoirs. But that depleted, but it's still a decent fishery. Anyways, I went fishing with them, and I knew that this was early in the year, that this was a jig bite. It was not a spy baiting bite on this lake at that time of year. But I went ahead and spy baited. Now, I had to do a lot of uphill spy baiting, right? Because we're talking about early year kind of transitions and fish moving into warming trends, etc. So I had to fish uphill. But I started fishing uphill, and I started catching fish spy baiting. And he got it. He actually got it. Now, that makes, what I'm getting at is I was flexible and experienced enough to make that adaptation, right? Versus just sit in the boat and make the cast. So
there's no different than fishing a jig, Bob. How many different ways can you fish a dig, right?
Oh.
You can skip it, you can fill it, you can swim it, you can hop it, you can do. This is exactly the same deal,
Yeah, I definitely got to get out there and do it. I've got George is asking David if Duo's planning on bringing a black matte color out for the spin bait.
I mean, we haven't. I have it for our lipless baits.
Okay.
And they've done, and it's been a deadly deal. I brought a black matte when we first made them to the Coast Championship, FLW Championship down in Gunnersville. And what was funny was it was a lipless bite going on there, and I started throwing that matte black, and I was catching significantly more fish with that, and it wasn't dirty water. It wasn't, a lot of particulate matter in the water. It was very clear. It was being filtered pretty well, and those fish were just smacking the snot out of it. So that's how I kind of became a fan of that matte color. I have no upfront intentions of doing that, but it would definitely be something to experiment with. Usually when I do a color, I like to have some time with that color. I really do. So I may have a concept out, and then after that, I may have 4 or 5 different types of that concept in play, and I start to tweak on them. And then once we get to a color that looks like it's producing a little bit more, then I actually start to spend a lot of time with that color. Personally, I like to do that because I'm a fisherman. I don't want to give you guys something that is just absolutely out there. It looks like a skirt and earrings, and you guys go for it. It's just it really has to do with prevailing. So I'm a fan of you guys as well. So that's why I spend so much time on colors, for sure.
Well, if you do get the matte black, can you send it to George first? He's a good guy, so we'll get Georgie his matte black spin bait first.
Listen here. He's not that good of a guy.
Oh, come on now, Danny.
No, I got to throw him up there on the wall with the other ones.
I hear ya. David, what about? Go ahead, Danny.
I still got to get that other color. What was it from Sebastian? Arctic turd or
Arctic turd.
Okay,
I'm trying to figure what that would look like.
I can see where this is going to go in a week. It's going to be called Arctic baby poop and all sorts of stuff. Get done with it.
That's it. We're going to take it. Poor Sebastian. I'll call Sebby. I'll call him afterwards.
David, Apex 66.
Yes, sir.
Talk to us about that.
This is probably one of my greatest pride and joys. It really has to do with about 15 years ago doing some research that I was trying to, my hypothesis was pretty simple. It basically said, why can't we catch bass on lipless crankbaits all throughout the year or the majority of the year? So we can catch bass on lipless crankbaits the majority of the year. So is my hypothesis. And I started working towards that and was brutally defeated many, many times. Usually it had to pertain to sound. The fish would just start to profile that bait and get and the stimulus would be overwhelming for them, and they'd peel off of the bait. But I had visuals of fish that were coming up, exploring the bait. And again, these are in different environments. One of them would be kind of ambient sound, which I call ambient environmental sound. There's water that's moving, rushing through branches and rock and sediment. So that actually makes a sound underwater. And the gravel's moving a little bit, or the sand's moving a little, and that sound goes and penetrates throughout the whole environment. So a rattle bait may sound a little bit different in that environment than it does in a place that is acoustically absorbing, like a weed line on each side, and you're running that bait. So I was finding out, even with the same exact sound, you had different times, depending on the environment, you had different times where the fish would actually investigate, and sometimes they wouldn't. But what it came down to basically is percussion, or kind of the concussion in the bait, which is that vibration that we call, and the sound. How far could I take this stuff into the annuum or into the year? Usually by spring, you know this, we get out there pre-spawn, you don't even have to have a name brand lipless bait. You could put 2 pieces of plastic together, stitch them up, and put a rattle in them and run them with hooks on it, and you're going to catch fish in the spring, on a lipless bait. And then all of a sudden you get into the post-spawn, and you start to get a little bit more wise. Maybe color is really, really important during that time frame. So you start dialing in more natural patterns. And then you get to the clear water, and all of a sudden the fish just dry up. They don't chase a rattling bait. You can still get them to go every once in a while. Maybe it's early morning when they're chasing bait, busting shad or something, where there's quite a bit of distraction. Maybe you can get them going there. But pretty much it starts to die off. Here's the interesting thing. The lipless bait is one of the most identical profiles of a bait fish that we have. Really, it is. Sure. And so, especially when you get into the smaller ones. So I was committed to try to make that lure go further into the annuum. Now, when I was with Lucky Craft, I would get some of the new lipless baits, and they had different things like one knockers in them, or they were silent. And so you got a couple different values out of that. But it kept coming back to, it wasn't so much that the bait was silent, it was the percussion. What type of vibration was this bait emitting, and at what frequency this was happening? Was it a lower frequency or a higher frequency? So playing with Mr. Adachi's Vibration 68, it's the thinnest lipless crankbait on the market by far. Maybe somebody's come out with something yesterday, but pretty much that bait is, and we made a G-Fix version of it, which weighed 3/4 of an ounce. So you're talking 68 mm at 3/4 of an ounce. And that was to compete with other 3/4 ounce baits. But to give you, it's just a dirty, nasty bait. The idea with that bait is that you hurt your enemy with it. It can cast a mile. You hit him in the forehead. He's knocked out. You don't have to worry about him in competition. That's really what that bait was designed for.
Nice.
Yeah, exactly. And so that bait comes in and it just drops straight down, and you reel it and cover your area. So those were two great lures. The Vibration 68 and the 68 G-Fix were great lures in themselves, but there was so much more potential with that bait. Because it's so thin, I wanted to actually increase the vibration on that lure, make that lure function at a lower frequency. So Aaron Martins and I worked diligently on that, and we came out with what they call the Apex tune. I will assure you, the Apex tune will change your lipless fishing the way that you think about it. I took that bait in dirty water. There's a color called AM Edge, Aaron Martin Edge, and there's another one called Aaron Martin Hasu. And Hasu is a bait fish in Japan, but I really like the bait fish pattern. It goes with what we do out here. And so I developed the Hasu in a prototype and started fishing that bait. And I caught out in Columbia River. We have a world-class fishery out there called the Columbia River. It's not Semco, but we've got some solid 3, 4, 5 pound fish in that class. And it is the best fishery by far out in the Western United States. There's nothing even remotely close. But it doesn't always behave the way that you want it to, even though it's 1,200 miles long. You would think so. But we came across a tough bite, and we had dingy water. So visibility in that water was 18 inches at best, which some people down south would think that's clear water. You guys, that's dingy water.
Yeah,
so
Arkansas, that's just beautiful.
Yeah, exactly. So you drop this lure into the water, and it would disappear at 18 inches. It's gone. Visually, you can't see it. And so I was using the prototype, and I had one pro angler. He had actually won a major tournament. He was in the front of the boat, and I had him fishing his lipless bait. This is a bank. I'm just going to say this is a stretch of bank that it's given. You throw a lipless lure on this bank. You just throw a lipless crankbait. It's just given. That time of year, that's what you do. And he caught fish, but I caught fish behind him as well. And it tended to be my fish were bigger. Now, here's the kicker. I did this 3 different times with 3 different pros, and I alternated twice on their boat. So that means he takes front position and I take rear position, and then we switch during the day. And I did that 3 different. So we're talking many, many hours of actual fishing the lipless. All 3 of those conditions, I caught bigger fish, more fish. And here's the kicker. That Hasu pattern is translucent. So not only did it disappear earlier than the 18 inches, there's nothing to cue you in to that lure visually. It's all vibration. So if you can imagine, you've got a red crankbait. Well, the fish sees a red crankbait when it gets several inches in front of its nose. The Hasu pattern was completely translucent. You can't even see it when it's in front of its nose anyway. So that's what I'm getting at. It was basically a clear bait, had a unique vibration to it. I'll just simplify it. It had a unique vibration to it, and that vibration showed over the course of what I'm going to say. I think it's going to be 36 hours at least, because it was over 12-hour days minimum. So over 36 hours, it showed itself catching bigger fish and catching more quality fish. So it was shocking. I didn't expect it to do as well. So of course, then I have to go out and test more and more and more. But this came after a year, basically, of the concept and testing, and then we got into real testing, and it really prevailed. So I started sharing that with a couple friends, and those guys were like, "Yeah, I could see how that possibly could work." Now those guys are saying, dude, this is all, it's in a topic all by itself, even though it's a lipless crankbait. And that's what I'm kind of excited about. I am going to do a video on it eventually where it'll be, I do these videos called Advanced Angler Instruction. And those videos are designed for the guys that are more serious about, you know, their fishing. Really the accomplished tournament anglers, that kind of, but I'm going to do probably a detailed piece on that because it's that powerful of a lure. There's no other lipless crankbait on the market that can compare to it in its attributes and what it's giving off. It's the thinnest crankbait, so that's another thing. So someone's going to have to come out and literally, to duplicate what we're doing, copy that lure exactly. So that gives a tournament angler an advantage. Again, you know, you guys are, I'm a fan of you guys, and that's one of the reasons why I tried to make this niche bait. But it's going to be really, really powerful. And I laugh because I told Aaron, I said, you know, we are going to be the only 2 people in the world excited about this. You realize that, right? He's like, yeah, dude, but it works. So I hope that gets passed on to guys. I'm really excited for guys. There was a couple Canadian guys that already have picked up a few. They were just trusting what I was saying. But, you know, I told them, I promised them, you play this game, it's going to work. Sebastian actually got some earlier, I graced him with some earlier baits, and he ended up catching some giant lake trout on him, which I know nothing about that type of fishing.
Oh, yeah. Tomorrow morning at 9:15 when he's in my office, I'll be going, so let's talk.
Yeah. But it's really a good bait. It's a well thought out lure for sure.
Awesome, Danny, man. Are we talking Pro J's again for Duo?
Oh, yeah. Pro J's is there.
How do you beat those guys? Pro J's, they carry everything we need.
Yeah, Pro J's has got them. Gagnon's has got them.
Oh, nice. Okay.
Yeah, you know, of course, Jamie Antoine's got them out there. So, you know, of course, the Canadian Tackle Store, you know, Sebastian, he's got them as well.
Oh, I just go to DD Sport Tackle, Danny Dunn Sport Tackle. I'll just come pick them up there. It's no problem.
And there's listen. You know, two things. Number 1, I got a shotgun. Number 2, I have property, and number 3, I have a backhoe.
Well, it's the backhoe. I'm out. I'm out.
Well, I will shoot you and bury you.
You know, the way to get by all that is just put the pizza at the front door and go back, and you'll dodge that bullet.
I'm telling you, just before, we were firing up the wood-fired pizza, and we were cooking pies. I'm telling you.
Oh, that's awesome. Yeah, you know, it's a good bait. It really is a good bait. I'm really excited for you guys up in Canada. I've watched the growth of spy baiting up there. It's been really cool. You know, for a long time, I had to keep my mouth shut because there was some big name guys that were using it. And I mean, they were, you know, what's the Sturgeon Bay Open? Several tournaments, the Sturgeon Bay Open guys were migrating to that tournament and going there specifically to do this. And so I had to kind of keep things quiet. I did the same thing. I laugh about this. The very first place that I introduced, and I tell this story 1,000 times too, so just kick me out when you want to. But the very first place that I introduced spy baiting to was in Texas. And I do say the story that, you know, if you want to keep a secret, man, you tell a Texan if it has to do with bass fishing. Because they won't tell anybody. If it works, they will not tell anybody. They just started talking about it literally 2 years ago.
That's wow. That's funny. Well, I'm running out of power on my phone here anyways, boys.
Yeah, well, we've kept David long enough, buddy. Thanks for coming on. We're going to stay tuned for some, I guess, have you got some new stuff coming from Duo in the next, in the near future?
Yeah, yes. I will have a new spy bait. I think a lot of people are going to be really, really excited about it. We have basically 3 models for the bait casting arena, and then we're going to have 3 models that are going to be for the tournament angler side on the spin casting setups as well. So I'm really excited about that because each one of those are going to do something for the angler, giving them a lot of versatility on that presentation. And then I've got some other things coming too. But the Apex crankbait, which is Aaron Martin's square bill, we're almost ready to release that. I think we're going to be about August. I think I can say that now. I think it's going to be sometime in August that we'll release that square bill. I'm pretty excited for Aaron on that. That's been one of his babies. So I hope it really does go well. I've had some really good catches on it already. I'll probably talk about square bill fishing. I think a lot of people think of it as crankbait fishing, and the square bill is actually much more than that. It's almost a technique in itself. So I may let out some interest along that line as well.
Right.
Right on, man.
All right, cool. Dave, thanks again for coming on, buddy. I really appreciate it,
man. Take care, guys.
We'll talk to you soon.
You rock, man.
All
Cheers.
Danny.
Wow.
I know.
Wow.
See, now it's just not. Now I got to get out there. Now I got to buy more spy baits or just come to your house and try to dodge bullets. And but no, I'm gonna get out there and do it. You know what I really liked about what he said there?
What's that? He's a fan of ours.
He was talking about coming in after fishing different techniques and then nailing one fish on a spot with a spy bait.
Yep.
That I like.
I'm telling you, it is the fastest, slowest presentation that I've ever used.
Really?
Yeah, man. Like today, I covered areas that I put my trolling motor on like 60, and I'm bombing this thing and just slowly spinning it.
Yeah.
And I'll tell you, throw a jerk bait all day and see how your arms feel.
Yeah. Getting too old for that.
Ooh, I'm telling you. I'm telling you. Anyway,
Danny,
brother, another great show, man.
Thanks for coming on, buddy.
You got her. Take care. Peace.
Okay, bud. Take care.
See you, George. Bye.
Hey, folks, if you like that, hit subscribe, hit like. Those two guys are awesome. Yeah. Hey, spy baiting. It's something new for me. I'm a jig guy for the most part, but I'm definitely going to get out there now and try some spy baiting. So it should be awesome. Anyway, guys, thanks for watching the show, and we will check in with you next week. Take care. Oh, and happy Canada Day.